The Miracles and Prophecies of St. John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Don Bosco predicts murder, and other stories. Seeing that his blessing healed people who were critically ill, St. John Bosco realized that this was due to Mary's intercession, and he took pains not to let the poison of vanity creep into his heart. He constantly and determinedly prayed, "Not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to your name give glory," as it says in the Psalms. He thought so humbly of himself that he frequently sought advice from learned and saintly priests. Bishop Bertagna, former professor of moral theology at the Convito Ecclesiastico, in turn, testified as follows at Don Bosco's process for beatification. "I am convinced that Don Bosco possessed the supernatural gift of healing. He told me so himself when we were both making our spiritual retreat at St. Ignatius' shrine in Lanzo. He confided in me because he wanted my advice on whether or not he should continue giving his blessing to the sick, along with holy pictures of Mary, Help of Christians, and of our Savior. He was ill at ease because many cures seemed prodigious and caused a lot of talk. I believed he was telling the truth, and for better or for worse, I advised him to continue giving his blessing. His humility helped him to find ways to divert attention from himself when people, realizing the power of his blessings, flocked to him in such numbers that he couldn't attend to his own duties. Lest the extraordinary happen then and there, he often advised people to make a novena or to recite certain prayers for a period of days, thus setting the time when the Madonna would grant the grace. And thus seeing to it that the favors were received in distant localities, he aimed at making his assurances of a cure less striking. Remarkably, his petitioners' prayers were answered on the day and month he designated. The Madonna left that up to him. Equally effective were the letters he sent with a holy picture of Mary, Help of Christians, as demonstrated by the grateful thanks he received from everywhere. Don Bosco said, "It must be remembered, though, that recovery is sometimes refused because it would do the soul no good, and at times it is granted partially so that the sick person may acquire greater merit. The following incident, written down by an anonymous hand, illustrates this point. In 1868, my mother and I called on Don Bosco. I sought his blessing because, at 25, I was afflicted with a relentless fever, slight but resistant to treatment, which drained me of my strength. The saintly priest suggested a simple laxative and asked me to recite 5 paters, aves, and glorias for about a month until the Feast of the Assumption. His smile and confidence made me certain that I would be cured. Before dismissing me, he gave me a booklet and a medal, and then had me kneel and say 3 Hail Marys with him. He prayed while standing, all the while resting his hand firmly on my head. When I arose, he looked sad. 'Don't be surprised if you'll always have some ailment,' he said. 'The blessing I gave you may not help you physically, but it will help you spiritually. Still, just do as I said.' I left somewhat disheartened, but took the laxative and recited the prayers. On the Feast of the Assumption, I felt worse than ever, but later I gradually improved. My fever, though, still bothered me quite often. In fact, I can truthfully say that since my visit to Don Bosco, I haven't had one single day of perfect health. I am convinced that as we were saying the 3 Hail Marys, Don Bosco saw that I would have to sacrifice the health of my body for the good of my soul." Father Joachim Berto testified as follows. One morning in 1868, 2 unknown ladies came to the oratory to see Don Bosco. As they were ushered into his room, he smilingly said to one, "Have no fear of becoming a nun. Be sure that it's God's will." Shortly afterward, the 2 ladies left, visibly moved. Curious, I asked Don Bosco why they were crying. "You see," he replied, "those 2 ladies are sisters. One wants to become a nun, and the other opposes her. They agreed to seek my advice." "But why were they crying?" "Because I gave them the answer to their question before they could say a word. It really affected them." "How did you know the problem?" You ask too many questions. I had a dream last night and saw those two ladies come to me and ask my opinion on that very matter. As soon as they walked in, I recognized them and simply repeated the advice I had given them in my dream. Other similar instances are recorded in the archives. Don Bosco was also endowed with an admirable spirit of prophecy. For instance, one evening at supper, he told this dream to several at the table with him, including Father Berto. I saw an oratory boy lying on the floor in the middle of his dormitory amid blunted knives, pistols, rifles, and severed human limbs. He was dying. "What happened?" I asked. "Can't you tell?" he replied. "I committed murder, and in a few hours I shall be executed." "I know that boy," Don Bosco went on. "I'll strive to straighten him out and make him devout and good-hearted, but his nasty disposition makes me truly fear that he will come to a sad end." Eventually, this boy joined the army, shot an officer, and had to face a firing squad. Fortunately, he repented and devoutly received the last sacraments. Around that time, there was a rare phenomenon that was observed by the oratory boys who interpreted the event as a good sign. Father Berta reports, "One evening after supper, I was with some boys near the bindery when a nearby group of youngsters cried out, 'Look up there!' I looked up. A red globe about 5 inches in diameter was gliding forward some 12 feet above the roof of the classroom building, slightly zigzagging and wavering at the speed of a sparrow darting from place to place. It cruised over the study hall, Don Bosco's room, and the rest of the building near the belfry of the old church, and then continued its flight almost as far as the railroad tracks, leaving a white tapering tail that faded away into white smoke at its far end. The boys were playing, and a lot of them stopped to watch it, mystified by such a phenomenon." Thus ended Father Berta's account. However, I remember another time that the boys spotted a fiery ball floating around the oratory, but it meant that Our Lady was displeased with the boys' conduct. If you'd like to hear that story, just click on the video that should appear on the screen. Thank you all so much for watching. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.